We've got Ellie Baker. Ellie first came to New Zealand as a traveller. After a few months on a work visa, she fell in love with both New Zealand and New Zealander David. As she wanted to stay just a little bit longer, she kept renewing her work visa until she became eligible for permanent residency and then citizenship. The little bit longer has now evolved into nearly 30 years as an immigrant. She and David live in Mangatangi with the last of the 4 children. Through her own experiences and listening to other migrants, she felt there were too few resources available to immigrants with emotional changes they face. Her aim is to offer ideas to help immigrants get through those emotional challenges, and for non-immigrants to increase awareness of what life can be like as a migrant. Ellie? Over to you, Ellie. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to have me speak today. My Migrant Emotions is the organisation I set up to help migrants become more settled. And today I'm going to go through a light-hearted look at the lifestyle of a migrant, because it's sort of the afternoon shift and sometimes people get a bit sleepy. And then I'll also talk about isolation and connection and disconnection that migrants might feel. I'm guessing that all of you are, if you're not a migrant yourself, you're obviously very familiar with migrants. So my aim is just to make migrants more settled and have a happier stay in the adopted country they've decided to live in. And I understand that quite often your clients, although you might just see them for the first 2 years, they might come back when they want one of their family members to come and apply for visas and that sort of thing as well. So it might have been a long-term relationship. I just wanted to add that I went to the Newcomers Network Hui in Wellington a few weeks ago, and the Director of Ethnic Affairs, Belinda Chin, made the comment that they really are looking at the soft and fluffy stuff, to quote her, about migration. So it's not all about policies and visas, it's also about making migrants feel more settled and happy to be here. So I will now start with the lifestyle of a migrant. Oops, maybe not. There you go. Now, if you just bear with me, what I want to show is the stages that a migrant goes through. We have the adopted country and the homeland country they go through. And I believe that there's a few stages they go through. It's not necessarily years, but it is stages. And I'm going to represent these through hats I'm wearing and conversations, imaginary conversations I have with either my mother or a loved one. So the first stage is when you've got very much your homeland, the red here. I hope nobody's colourblind here because they might not see the difference. Your homeland is the main influence in your life, and then the green is your adopted country where you're really excited to be there, but it's not influencing your life as much. And then as you go on, the homeland becomes less, and the adopted country takes over more till right at the end where you're mainly influenced by the adopted country, but there's still a little bit of your homeland always in you. And these are, if you want to think of them in years, so this is probably what you're dealing with most, the first couple of years of the new migrant, and then maybe 5 to 10 years, 15 to 20 years, and then thereafter. So conversations with my mother. Hi, Mum. Oh, it's just so exciting being here in this new country. I'm just loving it so much. There's so much to see, possums, pahudakawas. I'm just buzzing and bustling with all the excitement. It's just crazy. Will I come and visit you? I can't at the moment. I'm just too busy settling in. Next phone call. Hey Mum, yes, I've got a job now, it's great, but they take the mick out of my accent quite a lot, but I've got broad shoulders, I'll just have to deal with it. And I've joined a Zumba class. I feel like I'm reinventing myself. I can do anything I want because nobody knows me here really. It's a lot of fun. And I can't wait to see you. We're coming over soon. Hey Mum, oh yes, it was lovely getting to see everyone and spending time with them. It was really hard leaving though, much harder than I expected. It's kind of weird being back here in my home. My home? Well, yes, this is my home too. Of course, that is still my home too. I guess I've got two homes, and yes, of course, I still feel that's my home. Hey, honey, my best friend for so many years. You're finally married. You are Mrs. Jones. Gosh, I really wish I could have been there. I feel like I've missed out an awful lot. Are you having a great time? I knew you would. I'm sure he's gorgeous. Hey, they're playing our song. Lean on me when you're not strong. Oh, I'm just trying to be part of it. Oh, you've got to go? Of course you have. You've got all the guests. I bet you look gorgeous. Maybe one day they'll invent something where we can actually see each other when we're on the phone. Hey kids, wake up, wake up. You've got to say hi to Grandma, it's her birthday. Grandma, so you saw them all? You saw them on the screen? Oh, great. And you had a good birthday? You got their presents? Oh, you didn't. Funny, I sent them 3 months ago to make sure they were there. That's a shame. What else did you get? Oh, well done, Dad. That's fantastic. You're going to come and see us. What a great present. Looking forward to seeing you. Hey kids, wasn't it lovely having them here? Yes, of course we'd love to have them here more, but we can't. They've got their life there and we've got our life here. Well, if we went over there, then we'd miss our life here. What are we going to do? I don't know where I belong most. Sometimes I think I'd like to have a leg in each country, but my legs just won't stretch that far enough. Hi Mum, yeah, look, we're going to try and come over as soon as we can, but it's not going to be till about Christmas time. I know it's about a year away, but the thing is the children are so involved with their sports and their exams and their tournaments. I just don't know when's a good time for us to get over. I know I really would love us to come over, but just got so many commitments here at the moment. We'll just have to do the best we can, and you'll just have to wait till the end of the year. I'm really sorry. Oh, Mum, I can't believe it. What? I didn't even get to say goodbye. Oh, God, I'm so sorry. I'll be over in a couple of days. Mum, so brave of you to come here on your own. I'm so sorry the teenagers were so surly. They weren't really the best behaved. Honestly, they grunt or groan, and then they come out with their opinions so vocal that you wish they'd just be quiet. I can't believe that one day they're actually going to leave home and I'm going to miss them. Hey son, wow, you're in the country that I used to be in, and you're just working round the corner from where I used to work. Isn't it exciting being in a new place? I'm so pleased for you. It's such an exciting time. Can you say hi to everyone and enjoy Christmas over there? And thank you so much for going to Uncle Martin's funeral. He was such a good brother to me. I wish I could have gone. So it was kind of good that you could be there to represent us. I really appreciate it. Well, kids, I guess that's it. I'm an orphan now. Yep. Yeah, well, your grandparents would have loved to have more time with you, but the reality is they can't. They just wanted you to have a good life, and that's what they'll hope for you most. And you've got to know that they always will love you, and always did love you. Hey, son, congratulations, you're a father. I can't wait to see that baby. I love the smell of a new baby and to hold it. Oh, you don't want me to come yet. And you don't want me to come for a couple of months because your wife's mother's going to do all the caring for and that kind of thing. Right, okay, well, look, let us know as soon as a good time for us to come over because we're really keen and it is our first grandchild. So let us know as soon as possible. Hey son, oh look, third child, congratulations, well done. You're really pumping them out. How are we? Oh, we're fine, we've moved into our unit. It's cosy. Gets a bit crowded when all the other grandchildren come round though. Did you know Molly passed her grade 3 exam? Oh, your Anna passed her grade 4 last week too. Sorry, I'd forgotten that. It's hard to keep in touch with everybody. Well, look, yes, we'll come over as soon as we can, but Dad's got to have his treatment first. He's halfway through it. So we'll just have to do the best we can. Yeah, I'm sorry, we're not going to be able to come over for a while yet. Come in here, my oldest grandchild. How lovely to see you. Fancy that. Listen to your accent. It's just like my sister's when she was your age. Come and have a cup of tea and tell me all what it's like being a new immigrant in a new country. It's so exciting, isn't it? So that's that part. So I hope you can see that the emotional challenges kind of will go on through your life. And I do believe that there's always a bit of your homeland in you, the little bit of a heart. You can't get that away from people. And with that, I'm going to talk a little bit more, first of all, about isolation. I feel a migrant is often a guest in two homes. And what I mean about that is that a migrant often can't criticise about the country they're living in. They've chosen to be in the adopted country, but as soon as you say something about the country to a native born, you kind of get that brick wall of, they don't want to hear it, or they might tell you to go back to your homeland country. Whinging Poms is a classic example. So if you're a migrant and you can't express your feelings, your differences, then sometimes you feel like you haven't got a voice and you feel slightly isolated. They're also a guest in the home of their homeland, because I don't know what your experiences are, but mine are when I go back to England to visit my family or friends, I don't feel able to be freely criticised the fact that I don't like that they recycle as much as we do in New Zealand, or some of the things I perhaps don't like about England that I've been in New Zealand for so long, they're differences that I don't like about it, and they don't want to hear that. So you're a guest in your homeland because they really don't want to hear, because otherwise they'll say, well, why did you migrate in the first place? You might as well come back. And in a way, you're a guest in the country you've chosen to live in, because you can't voice your concerns. And that sort of isolated feeling can be a huge challenge for some people if they haven't got someone near them to offload that information. And I know of 2 women in particular who became very sick. They'd been here 25 years odd, and because they couldn't share their grievances, in both cases the husbands were New Zealanders, they couldn't share them and get to understand their husband to understand them. They became quite depressed, and one in particular became very depressed. Doctor put her on antidepressants, which made her sick, so she went to a herbalist, and the herbalist happened to be a migrant, and she started talking about her experiences as a migrant and how she couldn't really speak about her own opinions. And she said after 2 hours of talking to this migrant about her feelings and frustrations of feeling like an alien in the country she's chosen to live in, she actually felt a lot better. So I do believe that migrants need a place to offload, whether that's cluster groups or immigrant cluster groups of your own nationality, or friends you make, which are often migrants themselves, but someone who's got an empathetic ear and is going to help you get rid of that sort of bad feeling and feel more settled in the country you're living in. So now I'd like to talk about the connection and disconnection matrix. So I believe that that migrants have I'll go through these individually, but they strive to be, they still want to be connected with their homeland, and yet they're disconnected with their homeland. They want connection with their adopted country, and yet they have feeling a disconnection with their adopted country. So connection with the homeland. We've got Skype, which is great. You know, Skype is great. It's a lot better than the phone calls of 20 years ago, but you can't hug a 2-year-old on Skype, and you can't smell them, and it's a 2D experience. But nevertheless, it is good, and especially with mobile phones, you can stay a bit more connected. Visits home. I tend to go back about every 2 or 3 years. I sort of get an itch and then I feel I have to go. I don't always want to go, but I feel I have to go. And when I was launching my book, one of the interviewees, the husband of one of the interviewees, came up to me and said, I've calculated how much it's cost us in the last 20 years for all these visits back to the UK. And it was $65,000, which, you know, of course, cost shouldn't matter in that sort of thing, but when you sort of put in that big lump sum like that, you realise that it's actually quite an imposition on your finances and your plans for holidays. I don't know about you, but you know, sometimes I've resented the fact that all my holidays have been spent going back to see my family rather than going to Fiji or Rarotonga. I'd much rather lie on a beach sometimes than whiz around trying to see everyone and trying to keep connected with them, but that's what I do. Gift giving, staying connected, giving gifts. I don't know if you send Kiriana things back to, migrants send Kiriana things back to their homeland. There's only so many Kiriana power shells and earrings that you can actually send before they go, enough, stop, I've got the whole collection now, thank you. So that's another way of staying connected. Trying to keep up with the news from your homeland. It's, you know, I have a token effort myself. I basically know who Miliband in Cameroon is, but beyond that, I couldn't tell you lots of the other politicians or a lot of what the celebrities are. And then remittances. I read recently that the World Bank found out that last year India topped the remittances with $70 billion sent to India in remittances. Second to that is China with $64 billion in the year. So it's ways that people who've migrated want to maintain that connection with the homeland, and this is one of the ways they do it. And at the same time, the migrant will feel a disconnection to the homeland, even though they want to be connected when they go there. Again, I don't know if you who are migrants, when you go to your homeland, you sort of think it's going to be a fantastic time and it'd be so familiar and so lovely, but you get there and it's not all familiar as you thought it would be. It's not all as easy. I sort of liken it to sitting in a comfortable armchair. You get in there and it's like an old stuffed armchair when you sit in and you go, familiarity, fantastic. And then after a while you notice, this is an old armchair, there's a little bit of wood there, or there's, you know, something pranging in, an old spring pranging in. You notice all these little discomforts in there which don't suit you anymore. Maybe the country has guns which you're not used to, or their policies are different about gender, and it's things you have moved on, but the country that you've come from hasn't. So you have a little bit of a disconnection with your homeland. You can't get to all the funerals perhaps you'd like to, and as you get older, they get more and more. There's the idea that you can't share jokes with everyone because, again, you're not up with the play with all the topics that are going on. And if you imagine somebody, if an English person came to visit us and we were all laughing about John Key and ponytails, they wouldn't know what we're talking about. So they're isolated from that sort of laughter, and I do believe if you can't laugh with people, you're going to feel more isolated. the hot topics which everyone's talking about when you go to your homeland, you don't know about. And again, the kind of reverse culture shock. Like I say, you think it's all going to be familiar, but in fact, it's not as familiar as you thought it would be. At the same time, the migrant has a disconnection with the adopted country. So the ways of greeting people, just for example, and this of course is more extreme if English isn't your first language in the case of New Zealand. If the country you've moved to is a different language, these disconnection could be quite a bit more extreme. But having said that, even when obviously New Zealand's English speaking, I'm English speaking, there still are a lot of differences with the country and the culture between the two countries. So when you intuitively greet people, it's maybe, might not be a handshake for you, but then it's a handshake, or personal space is quite different. So you've got a constant reminder that you actually aren't from here. You are a different person. You've got a very different background. And that can give you a feeling of disconnection with the place. Sense of humour, again, you're in a group and everybody's laughing about a certain joke and you're not part of it. Again, laughter is, if you can find people that you can laugh with, then you're going to feel more sense of belonging. And I think it takes a while. Every country's got a different sense of humour, and it takes a while for you to latch onto the sense of humour of the country you're living in. And that doesn't always carry across all sorts of people. So hopefully there'll be people there that you can find, you can share jokes with and have a laugh with. So language, faux pas, and accents. Well, the language, I came across a German lady who married a New Zealander, and he was, I guess a redneck would be the best way to describe him. His language was quite foul. She didn't realise it was foul because she learnt most of her English from him. So, classic thing, out in the country, she goes along to the ladies' gardening day, uses all sorts of expletives, and the ladies, all about 60 plus, they're like, oh my God, completely shocked, but she had no idea. So she was corrected quite sternly at the time, but it wasn't her fault, and I really felt for her. Accents, I worked with a Malay guy back about nearly 30 years ago, and he was saying and his English was very good, and he said that he was just sick and tired of people telling him how to pronounce things. He said he'd put a sentence and they'd correct a little way of he was pronouncing something. And he said, look, do you understand me? I said, yes, I do. And he said, isn't that enough? I've learnt another language. I speak it coherently. Isn't that enough? Do I have to get every pronunciation right? I'm just sick of having to get it all right. So people become, I think, sometimes arrogant in saying, no, this is the way you should say it, tomato or tomato, whatever it is. But, it's, I think they do pretty well. People do pretty well to speak a second language. I'm ashamed to confess that I don't, and I think it's something I've missed out on. So I really admire people who speak more than one language. The poppy is just about is references to history. Again, a migrant is reminded that they haven't been there all their life and they haven't been told about Muldoon, Think Big, David Lange, nuclear, debate, or the Springbok tour, the major things that's happened in the country they're living in. So when conversations are made, then often they can't join in with them because they don't have the historical references. So this is a migrant striving for connection with their adopted country, and with that, hopefully, they'll get a sense of belonging. If they can work, fantastic, because there can't be any better way of contributing to the country. In fact, the immigration New Zealand, I heard them say that they're after successful migrants. And a successful migrant is someone who contributes to community and country. So I read that as they contribute perhaps in a volunteering way and also but working and paying taxes. And that's what every citizen should be doing. So if they can't, to increase connection with adopted country, if they're not working, or even if they are working and they want to join groups, then join a sports club or a Zumba class or woodwork or anything, anything that floats your boat really. Or join a volunteer group. So I'm striving for people to have connections with their adopted country, because I think the more connections they have, the more settled and the happier they will be as migrants. This is my work, my book, my newsletter, and I write a blog, which I sort of write something about once a month on. And it's always got what I feel are articles or issues or thoughts on ways that migrants can become more settled. Hopefully it's information that can help them be more settled in the country they've chosen to live in. The book is, I have got some for sale if anyone's interested. They're $25, but the newsletter is free. You can sign up for it either online or here, and I'll pass it on. But this is my work to sort of get people more settled, as I keep saying. And the book is really a result of when I was struggling as an immigrant, and also as a parent of young children. I'd read all these books about, self-help books about toddler taming and dealing with teenagers. And I said to a friend, gosh, why isn't there a self-help book for migrants so that, they can have by their bedside, so that when something happens, like their father dies or their father's dying and they don't know what to do, or there's a sister's wedding or something they can go to or can't go to, or maybe their work is not working out, they can look at the book and see what other people have done. So the book is the result of interviewing 25 migrants and identifying core issues that migrants face emotionally, and then at the end of each chapter, strategies and solutions for dealing with those situations. So the idea is it's a self-help book for migrants, and it also helps anyone who's dealing with them to be more au fait with the life as a migrant. So I would like for the migrants to go from feelings of isolation to inclusion. And I think ways of doing it are to join groups. And I think a big one is accept that there is a sense of loss. There will always be that connection feeling, because there's always a bit of your homeland in you. I think because your formative years are usually from your homeland, then it's very hard to rid yourself of that. And personally, when my father did die, and it was very much a rush home and everything, and rush to my homeland and everything, and then I came back and really struggled with the grief and ended up going to a counsellor, because my husband, who's lovely but Kiwi, didn't quite understand what I was going through. And the counsellor said, well, can you see the fact that you're away from your family and friends, as that's grief in itself, because that's a sense of loss. And if you can see it as grief, then perhaps you can accept it. And it was quite a revelation for me. It was, once I'd said, okay, well, my father died, that's sad, and I can be sad about him every now and again, but it's not going to overtake my life. I don't have access to my family and friends, that's sad, and that's okay to be sad about that, but I don't have to let it overtake my life. It is a sense of loss. I have lost access to them, but that when it's accepted as a loss rather than just get over it, then I could move on a lot more. So we can't deny migrants the feeling that there is a little bit of them that's feeling connected, disconnected, and have got a sense of loss. Put energy into where you are. The grass is always greener on the other side of the fence. I had a friend quoted to me once about the grass is always greener. She said, the grass isn't greener on the other side of the fence. It's just that your grass on your side of the fence needs more watering. So once you give your grass on your side of the fence more watering and give it more attention, then yours is going to become greener. And that's what I think migrants need to do. They need to accept a sense of loss and give attention to the land that they're living in, and then theirs will be the greener side of the fence. And if they're still struggling, then seek help, books, blog, and find like minds when they need it. But you don't have to live in misery as a migrant. Just keep watering your side of the fence and have a great garden. Thank you.
So, any questions from the floor? We've got time for questions before we break for afternoon tea.
Ellie, can I just ask you, in the book, are your interviewees from all sorts of different backgrounds, nationality? You didn't really talk about that. I'm not sure who they are.
Yeah, they're from 9 different countries, and they're not all living in New Zealand, although most of them are, because it made me easier to interview them. And their ages from 20 to 70, so I think different stages of migration. They are all women migrants. That's not because I was excluding men. It was just, they say when you're writing books, and this is the first book I've written, you should go with what you know best. And I know women a bit more than men, so they also talk more. So
I have a question, Ellie. Now, apart from reading your book, do you provide any kind of service to people who are in such need that if anyone ever comes across, and if we could refer to, or is it referring your book?
At this stage, it's just referring to my book. I don't provide counselling services or anything like that, but I'd be very happy if you want to email me with your, or pass on comments, and maybe I can point them in the direction of somebody that could help. Thank you. Yeah.
Any more questions?
Just a quick question. What made you, how did you come around to writing the book?
How did I come around to writing the book? Well, I wanted the book. That's the book I wanted to read. When I was struggling as a migrant, I thought it'd be great to have this self-help book. And I was frustrated that at the time there wasn't, this is 20 years ago, there didn't seem to be much help for migrants. And I researched it, on the emotional side, I researched it quite a lot, and all the books were very academic and not easy read. And so consequently, I've made this an easy read book with pictures in it. And, so you can pick it up, put it down, and go through it. And I think I always enjoy writing, and it was really a friend said to me, I said, there should be a book out. And she said, well, you should write one then. So never make a suggestion, because you'll always get a job.
Ellie.
Yes.
June Ranson. I'm delighted you've come along and spoke on this topic, because actually this is a very vital part of our work. I'm a licensed immigration advisor, but we actually provide this, but we take it much further, because we look at it as the whole family, we look at it as the business integration, and then following through from the counselling. And there's one area that I would say that in your delivery, what you should also consider including is the case of bereavement. Because when a migrant actually settles into this country, they're not prepared when their family offshore actually loses a loved one. Parents, brothers and sisters, and they really need to be alerted to how to handle this. So I just make a comment about that.
Yes, and again, in my book there is a section on having to rush home for sad events. I call them the sad, bad and glad times of migrants, in, suggesting that you make provisions for that emergency fund all the time. And it's difficult, because you never know when to go, when's the right time to go.
Any more questions? Well, Thank you very much. Thanks for your presentation, Ellie.